everybody. Welcome to my booth. I'm Jay. It's Thursday. You know what that means. We've got a sample. This is from Richele. We're going to give it a listen. If you'd like me to listen to audio of yours, there is a form in the description. Send me something. We'll do something like this just soon. There's also coaching on my website, also available down below. Richele, that's enough of me talking. Take us away.
There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Alice. Only, as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room! No room!
Okay. Awesome start. You gotta love Alice in Wonderland. It's such a fun little story. So weird. I watched the movie recently, the animated film, the old school one. It was scary, man. I couldn't finish it. It really weirded me out. I had fun. Anyway, you know those movies where you start, anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Back to you, Richele. So things that I love, obviously this material seems to really fit your voice, I think, which is really, really lovely. And I think that your performance is off to a really, really lovely start, and I'll give you a few things that I think will just help improve it a smidge. The first thing, and the easiest thing to address, is this moment where they're yelling, no room, no room. And you can see here, if we just look at the whole entirety of your audio, it's a bit of an outlier. It's really loud relative to the rest of your audio, which in and of itself isn't bad. But there are a couple things that you can do to make that a unified experience across so that there isn't a peak of volume and then back to normal. The first is if you know that you're going to perform that moment loudly where the characters are going to yell, no room, no room, you can do what I just did and pull yourself away from the microphone. You'll notice that I start to get a little bit quieter the more distance that I get. And so you can, like pop singers, you'll see them when they're about to belt, they go like, ah, and back away from the mic. That is them using microphone technique so that they're not, distorting the microphone, but also so that they can sort of add a bit of volume dialing manually by just moving their distance from the microphone. Alternatively, you can use the gain knob on your interface. So you know you've got it set at a certain level for the majority of your recording where you're just narrating like this, and then you know you're about to get loud. You can turn the gain down for that moment, no room, and then turn it back up to that normal level. A tip for that is make sure on your interface or whatever you're using to set your gain on. What I used to do was have a little piece of tape marking the exact point where my gain was set so that I could always go back to that same exact setting. And that was really helpful for me in making sure I had unified recording levels across the board. The other really small technical thing, I'm not sure if this is me being a crazy person or if you are doing this, but it sounds to me that the pacing between some of your phrases, from the ending of one sentence to the start of the next, on occasion it sounds as though you've edited the space in between. So what I mean by that more specifically, if I'm not being clear for everybody, is it sounds to me like you're going in between this stuff and taking out things like that. Or perhaps you had to retake something and you're trimming stuff together. In both instances, I would say that you can allow yourself more space. There are just moments in this, whether or not you've edited it or you are comping together a couple different takes. It'll sound much more natural if you maintain a natural distance. For example, this bit here, I believe it's here.
Alice. Only as it's asleep,
Yeah.
very
So this pause right here, we know it's natural because we hear you end this phrase, take in a breath, and then enter into the next phrase. So listen out for that.
very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Alice. Only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large.
And the next one too, you pause, only it doesn't mind. And then you go into the next phrase, which is really, really lovely. And it gives us a nice natural pacing. And we're with you in the telling of that moment. Let's listen to that bit again because it's really nice.
Only as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No!
So that is what I would say natural phrasing. And then if we listen to a little bit here in the beginning, it sounds to me like you may have edited a little bit. And what I like to do when I'm editing things together, so if I'm cutting out a mistake for myself or I'm trimming out a breath or something like that, I like to take note of how long the natural pause was before I make any edits, just so that I maintain that same duration. Because for us people, human beings, that pause in between phrases, we can detect when it sounds weird or artificial in a way. And that's sort of what was happening to me. So let's listen out again and see if I can pinpoint one exactly.
There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. A dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head.
That one right there. And talking over its head. The way you've ended that, it seems to me like if I have an image in my mind, I don't know why this is the image that I have in my head at the moment, but if I had like a note or a pedal in the air or something, and talking over its head, and it's still floating there, and then the next phrase or the next gust of wind picks it up and it keeps moving. And that sort of visualization is what I hear in stories where it says, and picked up over its head, and it still floats, the energy is still sustained, and then we go into the next phrase. And so when editing things, it's really important and helpful to make sure that you're maintaining those pauses so that it doesn't sound like, let me go back to this again, and went over its head. And then it went back here where it's just an unnatural shift. We love to live in those little lifted moments of suspense, which doesn't have to mean like a suspenseful, like thriller type thing, but the moments where we're lifted and then we move on to something else instead of, and then we're going back here again. Let's keep listening a little bit more.
There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at the end of the table.
I love the way that you're using these characters, or you're performing these characters, rather. We get a sense of who they are. There is one thing that you could do just to dial things up a bit further. The difference between the character dialogue and your narrator dialogue, the way that I liken it, characters in a story in general, they will exist in an imagined physical space. So at this moment, Alice has come into this area in front of this house, and maybe she's standing 6 feet, 10 feet away from all these people around this table. And so she has to project as if they're away. Hey, there's plenty of room, you guys. And then your narrator voice goes back to just talking to you and me. Alice said this as she walked around the corner or whatever. So when you're telling stories about, like, I went to the grocery store and this person came around the corner and said to me, hey, you, that's my orange juice. And I just couldn't. And then you go back to your talking to the specific person. So all to say, you can sort of dip in and out of the imagined space, in this case, in front of this house with a bunch of people at a tea party, and then back into the narration space. And for myself, the narration space, I usually put myself in I like to put myself in somewhat intimate, cozy settings with whoever I'm telling the story to. Some examples are around a campfire is an image that I use a lot. On someone's bedside, a la The Princess Bride, where Peter Falk, the grandpa, is reading to the kid. That sort of setting is really, really lovely. In a cafe, telling a story to someone, a living room, things like that, where I can sort of set myself up, and that helps me to sort of dictate the tone of my narration. And that's just a helpful, easy little trick that I use to put myself in those different worlds. The last couple things that I will say, I'll just address small technical things as far as performance. Those would be my big notes. Technical things, again, when you're editing those pauses, just pay attention to making sure that they maintain the natural length. Aside from tweaking the gain on your interface or pulling away from the microphone as you get louder, with these louder bits, you can manually just try to match roughly the volume with the rest of the section. So instead of it being far louder, it's about the same level.
In the corner of it. No room! No room! They cried out when they saw it.
And that just makes for a more consistent thing. There are other processing techniques that you can use, like really gentle compression. I have other videos on this channel about that if you'd like to check them out. And then the last thing that I'll say, this audio file is currently in stereo, meaning you have a left track as well as a right track. And for audiobooks and narration, we want it to be in mono. Most of the time, VoiceOver in general is in mono, but in audiobooks in particular. So when you're rendering your files, just make sure that whatever settings you have, whatever they may be, that you are selecting under the channels option, mono, not stereo. And that'll set you up to be within specs, as it were. And with that said, Richele, great work. Keep us updated as you go. And if you have any questions about this stuff or any of you other folks out there, hey, I'm here for you. Let me know down in the comments below. And until the next one of these, be well, and I'll see you there. Toodles.